くぞGenocide Kata!
What's up, everybody? Welcome back. This is Forgo, and after a tremendous amount of testing, I pretty much figured out the strongest set cards for all of the Guilty Gear characters. So that is exactly what we're going to talk about today. Now, there are a ton of card sets that I actually did these tests with. So let me go ahead and let's talk about the card sets first, and let me show you guys what we did some testing with. So we're just talking about set cards. So all these cards with the yellow option on here. So, you know, I tested with the KS set. I tested with Akane. Akane is going to be very important. I tested with the Athena set. I tested with the, let me see here, the SS set on my free-to-play account. I also tested with the Guilty Gear set on my free-to-play account. And I also tested with some other set cards that we got in past collaborations. Let me see if I can find them. For example, like the Yantama set, because this actually has bleed and burn on it. You know, some of these characters do have burn and bleed. I also tested with the 7 Nights set. This set has Starlight and Shock. Has Shock and Darkness. And then I also tested with this Merlin set, which actually has Starlight and Chill. All right, all these Guilty Gear characters have dot effects, and every one of these specific set cards, like this one right here, you guys can see that, you know, you get the extra attack, but what's important is that it increases your Starlight chill damage by 75% and active skill damage by 23%. If I scroll on to another card here, it's kind of frozen right now. There we go. If we scroll up to the 7 Nights cards, and I realize a lot of you don't have these cards, but if you've been playing this game for a while and you were playing during these collaborations, you might have these set cards. So I thought it'd be a good idea just to go ahead and show you whether or not, or tell you whether or not these are actually the best sets for these specific characters. Like this set here, it's the same thing, guys. The same amount of attack increase. You still get the active skill damage increase by 23%, but you get increased to Shock and Darkness with this set. And then with the Yantama set, it's going to be bleed and burn, but it only increases your active skill damage by 20% instead of 23%. So it's really the weakest amongst them. But I wanted to test those sets as well as the SS set for the SS characters. They're not going to work on the regular collaborations. So Dizzy, Saul, and Viking can all benefit from the SS set, which is this set right here. And this set does increase your special signature fighter active skill damage by 25%, increases attack by 20% for 5 seconds upon a special signature fighter landing a blast skill on a 10-second cooldown. And then, of course, you know, we're also going to be, you know, we're going to be testing with the collaboration set. Now, I'm not going to show you guys any video footage of all this because it's just way too much. There's too many characters, too many runs. It took me literally hours to run through all of these characters. So let's talk about them one at a time. And we'll start with the free-to-play character, which is Mei. Of course, Saul's free-to-play too, but we're going to start with Mei. Now, Mei, the strongest set for her was actually the Merlin set. That set that I showed you from the previous 7 Deadly Sins collaboration, which actually increases chill damage. And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, because Mei's got increased chill attack damage by 30% in her core. It makes a lot of sense, you know. Plus, her first skill actually, it deals chill damage equal to 36% of attack. And she did the most damage with that Merlin set or the Athena set. Oh yeah, speaking of which, I didn't even show you guys the Athena set. Let me show you the Athena set here really quick. This is the Athena set right here. This was we got during a SS banner with Athena and Maisie. But this actually increased your defenses, increased attack by 50% of defense, and then 30% chance to deal additional damage equal to 180% of defense upon landing an active skill. Now these are transcended, I realize that, but I pretty much, you know, played the game long enough that I can estimate whether or not they're going to be stronger. And I've always known that when it comes to the Athena set, that it will always do more damage on defensive characters, especially when they got attack buffs based off defense, more than the KS set will. So this set's usually always stronger than the KS set, and that's kind of the gauge that I went by when comparing them. But that Merlin set, this set right here, is godly on Mei. It is godly. That in the Athena set is godly. Then after that would be the KS set. The next character that we're going to touch on is Ino. Now, Ino, we've actually already done a little comparison. I showed you guys that the Akane actually can pretty much keep up with the Guilty Gear set as far as optimal damage. So those are really the best sets for this girl. Either the Guilty Gear, I even tested this set on her, by the way, as well. But the Guilty Gear and the Akane are really the best for this character. If we ever get another collaboration set that actually increases your poison damage, that would be insane. If we did ever get one of those things, because she has poison explosion, if we got a set that actually increases poison damage, that would be nuts. You know, similar to the Yantama set here, or similar to the, Seven Knights, or the Merlin set. What's the set here offer? No. Okay. But if we ever get a set that increases poison damage, like these sets that increase burn and bleed and starlight and so on, the fact that Ino has dot explosion, that probably would make that set be the strongest for her. But right now, with the sets that we have in the game, the Akane and the Guilty Gear set are pretty much numero uno for Ino. Now, Ramlethal was actually pretty interesting because Ramlethal, unlike May, she doesn't have any increase to a certain type of dot effect. And, well, she does have increase to darkness damage by 20%. And the Seven Knight set does increase your darkness damage. And when it came to Ramlethal, it was actually pretty interesting. It was pretty much a three-way tie. The Guilty Gear set, the Merlin set, which actually increases Starlight, and she does have Starlight Explosion on her second skill. She does deal Starlight, but she has Starlight Explosion, on her first skill, right? And the more Starlight you have, or the more darkness you have on this character, the more damage you're actually going to do. So the Seven Knights set, because it increases darkness and she has darkness already in her kit and her core effect, is actually quite insane. The Seven Knights, the Merlin set, because it actually increases Starlight, or the Guilty Gear set, they pretty much were about a tie between those three sets on Ramlethal. Those things work really, really well for her. And then the set after that would be the Athena set, and then the Kea set for this character as far as the most damage. It's actually pretty interesting how it works out for Ramlethal. I'm going to be talking about imprint stones for these characters also in the future, but I think this video is going to be long enough as it is, so I'm just going to keep it to card sets. Now we get into the SS characters, and I'm actually going to save Saul last because the difference in damage between card sets that's available for this character is absolutely nuts. Oh, so we're going to talk about Viking first now. Now, Viking actually does have shock damage in her kit and bleed, right? And the thing about Viking is that, she does have a bleed attack damage increase. But the thing is, she increases her active skill damage on bleeding targets by 80%. So even when you apply shock, and you definitely want the shock damage to be applied because you get the increased target damage received by 28% for 5 seconds upon landing a shock target. So it's kind of like you always want to have a little bleed applied. That way you're always getting this increased active skill damage bleeding target by 80%. You get the bleed attack damage increase also here, right? All these things are going to be applying. So sometimes you got to play Viking in a certain way to really get the most damage out of her. But as far as card sets for this character, the Seven Knight set proved to be the best for her. It really did, guys. And, it makes sense because when it comes to her shock damage, she deals shock damage equal to 38% of attack, right? And it's a lasting dot effect, whereas whenever you just apply bloodshed, it's still bleed damage equal to 30% of attack. Now, I know she has the bleed damage attack increase in her core, but I'm telling you, with the Seven Knight set, increasing that shock damage, she just did a little bit more damage. Not an insanely amount more, but a little bit more damage with the Seven Knight set. And then after that was the SS set and the Guilty Gear set. The SS set and the Guilty Gear set was pretty much a tiebreaker for this character as far as the most damage. And then after that was the Akane. And, the thing is, when I was doing all these little comparisons, my free-to-play account, I have the SS set, right? I do have the Guilty Gear set. But on this account, I have the, the Yantama set. I have the Seven Knights set. I have the Merlin set is what I like to call it, or the Seven Deadly Sins set on this account. So I really had to, so what I did was I tested all, I should have said this at the beginning of the video, but I tested all these characters with the Akane set, right? Because I have the Akane on this account and on my free-to-play account. And that was kind of my basis for testing like the difference in damage output. When I was throwing in the SS sets on my free-to-play and throwing in the Guilty Gear sets on my free-to-play, that's the basis for how I know which set actually did the most damage. Now, when it came to Dizzy actually benefited tremendously from the Guilty Gear set. That thing was absolutely nuts on her. Matter of fact, the Guilty Gear set and the Merlin set or the Seven Deadly Sins set, applying that extra chill damage, did the most damage for this character. The Merlin set, or the Seven Deadly Sins set, and the Guilty Gear set was pretty much a tiebreaker for this character. This character has increased chill attack damage increased by 15% in her core. She has Dot Explosion on her second skill for chill damage. And whenever you have the Merlin set or the Seven Deadly Sins set that increases your chill damage, it just synergizes really well with this. Your explosion's a lot stronger, and you just do a lot more damage. But the Guilty Gear set was right there with it. It was right there with us. So the Guilty Gear set and the Seven Nights set, or I'm sorry, the Seven Deadly Sins set was actually the best for this character. Her dot explosion is the exact same, whether she applies burn or chill. The amount of increased attack, as far as chill and burn, is the same. But because she has the chill attack damage increase in her core, the Seven Deadly Sins set did more damage than the Yantama set, because the Yantama set doesn't have any burn damage in her core. So as far as the most damage for this character, the Guilty Gear and the Seven Deadly Sins was pretty much tied. The Yantama set was the next set to be as far as doing the most damage. Then it was the SS set, and then it was the Akane set for Dizzy. But really, man, seriously, if you got that Guilty Gear set, which I know a lot of you probably don't have the Seven Deadly Sins set because you might not have been playing during the Seven Deadly Sins collaboration, the Guilty Gear set will do the most damage for this character. And then we get into the last but not least, and that is Saul, a free-to-play character that everybody should have been able to get to A3. Now, Saul only has one dot effect. He has burn, but it is a burn explosion, right? You know, deals 5.5 times remaining burn to the target and removes the burn after landing an active skill on a burn target, right? The more burn you have, the more damage you're going to do. Anytime you have dot explosion, the more of that attack you're going to have, the more damage you're going to do. I mean, that worked out with Dizzy with her chill damage. It worked out with Ramlethal with the Starlight and the Darkness. So for Saul, really, the more burn you have, the better off you're going to be as far as, you know, dealing as much damage as possible. And Saul, the Yantama set, was #1 by a large margin. I tested the Guilty Gear set on him, and it's actually the second best set on him. And then the SS set is actually the next best. And then after that's the Akane. But the Yantama set on this character, because of the increased burn damage by 75%, is insane. Like, when you compare the Yantama set versus, like, say the Guilty Gear set, you do like way more damage. That set is crazy on this character. So a quick recap for all these characters as far as the best card sets possible. May, the Seven Deadly Sins or the Athena set are pretty much tied, and then the Kea set would be the best for her. Then Ino, the Guilty Gear, and Akane are going to be the best for her. And then we get into Ramlethal, which the Guilty Gear, the Seven Deadly Sins, and the Athena set are pretty much tied for Ramlethal. And then after that would be the Kea set. And then Viking, the Seven Nights, would be the best set for her. And then the SS and the Guilty Gear are pretty much tied as far as those sets. And then the Akane after that. And then Dizzy, it's going to be the Guilty Gear or the Seven Deadly Sins set is going to be the best for her. And then after that, it's going to be Yantama, then SS, then Akane. And then for Saul, the Yantama set is #1. Then after that, it's going to be Guilty Gear, then SS, then Akane. And remember, all of these figures that I did don't take into account any leaderships, right? You know, you got a leadership like Viking here, who has the increased attack, fighter attack by 40%, and the critical damage by 50%. So when you throw on like the Guilty Gear set with her, it's going to be even stronger. So like, you know, whenever I tested Viking and, you know, other game modes, the Seven Nights set was actually the best. But if you're using the Guilty Gear set on this character, maybe in Guild Raid, then maybe that would actually be better than this Seven Nights set, because you'd be using her leadership. So there are some other, you know, variables in here as far as, you know, what the best sets are for these characters. But as they sit, without using any kind of leaderships, anything to skew the critical damages or anything like that, the sets that I gave you turned out to be the best for these characters. And it's actually really nice to know that, you know, if you've been playing this game for a long time, you did get those previous collaboration sets from Yantama, from Seven Deadly Sins, from the Seven Nights, that they actually do prove to be very relevant, especially for quite a few of these characters, which is pretty awesome. It actually rewards veterans for playing this game for a long time, so it's actually really good. And for newer players, the Guilty Gear set is still extremely strong on all these characters but May. May's really the only one that doesn't really benefit that much from having it, except for maybe the CP gain. So let me know how y'all feeling about the optimal card sets for these characters. And I do stream on Twitch at 9 p.m. GMT+7 time. The link is in the description below. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. Y'all take care and have a good one. See ya.